Hello there, and welcome back to War Thunderbird, the Leopard 2PL, and this is a Polish squadron activity reward main battle tank in the German tech tree at battle rating 10.7. It costs you a whopping 520,000 squadron activity points, and since they are limited to 20k per week max, even if you have theoretically more activity, it literally costs you exactly half a year to unlock, or you get it via Golden Eagle. It is not a premium tank, it is just like a regular tech tree tank. And the question is this thing worth it or not? To be honest, it's a bit of a worse Leo 2A5, and then that's all that I have to say at first. However, I want to start right at the basics, because this vehicle will probably be bought by also quite a few of very new players to top tier, and for them this vehicle can be a rather rude awakening, despite it being a fantastic tank, because top tier is completely different to what you might be used to from low tier or even mid tier. There are so many technical differences, both in ammunition, firepower and armor protection, and also the stock grind can be really hefty, also with the maps being not really suited for what the tanks in theory could do. I have here some gameplay examples for you to give you a little bit of the taste what can happen, and there are many more aspects. So since this is not a short-term offer, you probably should think twice if you really want to get this tank right now, if it's not already too late. And to be honest, I think especially new players should rather keep their wallet shut. Again, not because the tank is bad, but the experience, if you have no top tier experience whatsoever, will be absolutely awful. I promise you that. Experienced players, I don't think that I really have to tell them too much about what APFSDS and HeatFS stock grind means, what the gun handling of this tank is like, how to kill this tank and how to kill other nations' tanks, etc, etc, etc. But let's start right at the first of the three categories, speed. After this, the protection, and then the firepower. So the speed, we have a horsepower to ton ratio of 25.3, and that is 2 horsepower per ton less than the Leopard 2A5, which basically this tank is with a few modifications. The Leo 2A5, with which you share the battle rating, has 25.2, so roughly the same, and the Leopard 2A6 24.96, so 25. So you are just a fractional faster in acceleration. Top speed with 68 is the same, and minus 31 in reverse is also quite nice. So the speed is alright. However, there is one thing that you have to keep in mind. The tank, when stationary, takes a while to rev up. The engine is rather sluggish. Once it has the revs, it really gets going, but before that it really feels slow. Soviet tanks are a bit more nimble. Also, there is a strange hyperfraction when you try to turn. So that is something that you really have to experiment with, how to drive this tank optimally. Then we have to come to the protection. Well, basically it is like a Leopard 2A5. That means the side of the hull is absolutely paper. The front of the hull gets pierced by every APFSDS that gets flung around, and that means you should empty your frontal ammo rack, which sits on the left hand side, the right hand side when you look at the tank, and that limits your overall ammunition capacity to 17 in the ready rack. No, I'm sorry, 16. 15 in the ready rack itself and 1 already in the breech of the gun. And then there is the turret. The turret might look more like the Leopard 2A5, but it is just a little bit of a retrofitted 2A4 turret. That means it is pretty weak. At least the left hand side, where the optic is really for the gunner, and that means a lot of people are aiming there because it's an easy target to knock out the tank if the tank just gets missed with the usual gun barrel gun breach combo, which is really meta at top tier. Everybody shoots there to disable the enemy tank and then gets hunted down, and so should you. The next thing is that the right hand side, if you look at the tank, is a bit more tougher, but it's far from what the Leopard 2A5 offers you, for both sides that is. So the tank's armor is not its strength, it is rather than the gun. And the gun is the good old 120mm Rheinmetall 120 L44. 42 rounds overall ammunition capacity, and as I just stated, overall 16 rounds capacity in the first ammo rack, and that gives you a reload for an ace crew fully trained for 6.0 seconds, so that is rather quick. After this it is longer, and by that time you should be in a cap to refill, especially your first ammo rack. Then we come to the ammunition. The two differences to the Leopard 2A4, which stands at battle rating 10.0, to this Leopard 2PL, which is at top tier of 10.7, where there are worlds in between, are the top AP FSDS and also an additional HE round. Now, another factor that is different is the camouflage, and that looks really cool, but it costs you again, I think, 200 gold needles, but I was paying the price. So, first of all, stock heat FS is not good, and while for low tier 480mm of heat FS sounds great, in practice, yeah, a lot of tanks have very good nearer elements that deal better with heat FS than with AP FSDS for the same penetration values, because it is just a different kind of armor. And that's before we talk about then also the side plate with ERA, explosive reactive armor, and that means it explodes and then significantly reduces the shape charge penetration value to the point where most tanks are for the first hit almost immune. Again, with most exceptions being then when hitting the gun breach or the turret ring area, where almost no tank has real significant protection. So again, explaining the meta. And this is your first shell type. The other shell that you can get early on as a tier 1 upgrade is the DM23, which is the top shell of the Leopard 2A5. 410mm of penetration, 237mm at 60 degrees angles of attack, and a whopping muzzle velocity of 1640 meters per second make it really great for sniping, snapshotting, and in general hitting the enemy relatively easy, in combination with your laser rangefinder, which you sadly get as a tier 4 upgrade. Then as a tier 2 you get the other thing that is different, and that is the DM11. It's an HE shell with a still decent muzzle velocity of 950 meters per second for a chemical energy warhead that is not heat FS, so HE basically. You have 37mm of penetration. This shell doesn't really fill me with confidence, to be honest. Versus Soviet tank it has very limited use. Versus Western MBTs you can get the occasional lol pen and blow up, especially if you shoot under the side skirts or under the enemy tank, but those occasions are rather rare, and mostly you should go then with the tier 4 AP FSDS, the DM33. 481mm of penetration and 278mm at 60 degrees angles of attack are better than the DM23, but is far from what you get from the Leopard 2A6 with its mighty DM53 from the awesome L55 gun with 652mm of penetration and even higher muzzle velocity of 1750 meters per second. And there are many more tanks that have also better ammunition than you have, and again your armor is rather papery. So that explains where you stand. The next thing is, what is really great about this tank is the thermal imaging, which is then also an upgrade that you thoroughly want to have. It is both for your gunner and your commander there, and it gives you really great vision. I think it is at least second generation thermal imaging, but I think it's not as crystal clear as some of the other third generation thermal imaging that is running around. I might be wrong here, correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section. So this tank, is it worth it for new players? I'd say no. Not because it's a bad tank, but because top tier is vastly different and you shouldn't really go and play with the top tier. I think it's a really bad move by Gaijin to cash grab here the community with this tank like that, because at the moment German teams collapse really quickly because of this tank. Not because it's a bad tank, but that's all that a lot of the players that pay for this tank have. They might have at best a backup which costs 60 gold needles, or you go in and, you know, activate the backups from your for your tank assault arcade or your warbond shop things. But at some point it really lets you down. You don't have as many backups as you would need with this tank. Then you have no planes as a lineup filler, and no other tank in your lineup. No SPA, no lighting, no other MBT, nothing like that. And this is why I highly would suggest that you go and, you know, don't throw your wallet at Gaijin and actually give yourself the time that it takes for your squadron to grind this. I know it's a long time, and I know your fingers are itching to really open the purse, but trust me, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. Because the experience with night battles, this tank being then stock, you have to throw another couple of thousands golden eagles at it. And then you want to buy a talisman, but this talisman only is really effective with rank 6 and 7 tanks, not with the 5, 4, 3, you know. So many things that speak against it. I don't want to sound negative here. I don't want to discourage you if this is your dream for War Thunder top tier. But this dream can become a nightmare. And the only one who profits immediately is Gaijin. And while I want Gaijin to earn all the money in the world, this can absolutely spoil your future of tank combat in War Thunder if you don't know the subtle differences in the mechanics, in how to position yourself, how to play with your team. I mean, you recognize probably the maps from low tier. In a city brawl, when then the sound system lets you down, that's awful. But to be honest, top tier is brutal. Top tier is absolutely high competitive gameplay, and it is something where I'm just not feeling confident to give this tank an absolute thumbs up. It has great gun handling, 40 degrees per second target rotation speed, 20 degrees per second gun elevation. It has 6 seconds reload, which is good, but there are tanks running around with 5 seconds in autoloaders. Then you have, quote-unquote, only 16 rounds in the ready rack, which is more than enough for a normal battle. The HE round is more a meme for memeing you rather than the enemy. And yeah, your top APF STS, which lays either behind a big paywall or a massive painful grind, is, yeah, average. It sets the standard, but a lot of tanks just make their selling point to be better than this standard. So the Italian tanks, the Leopard 2A6 and the French tanks and many other nations' tanks just have better APF STS, and your armor is more on the paper side. So this is the introduction to the Leopard 2 PL. It is basically a Leopard 2A4 at 10.7, and that is a bit of a problem. Other than this, it's a fantastic and also good looking tank that performs as usual. And that is it for me today, so thanks for watching, thanks for listening, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a like, subscribe if you want to see more, and we'll see each other on the waves, in the skies, and on the battlefields of War Thunder.